Hello everyone, welcome to the first chapter of HCIP OpenELDR course. This section, we will continue to introduce the common service management of OpenELDR. Apache HTTP Server is an open-source web server software that provides information over HTTP. Apache is one of the most widely used web server software in the world. And in this section, we will learn about the Apache service, including its key features and working modes.
In this chapter, we will introduce Apache and its basic configuration. Apache is an open-source foundation. Its first project is the HTTP server. So the HTTP server is also called Apache. And when we talk about Apache later, it refers to the HTTP server project. And also, there are many famous projects under the Apache open source foundation, such as Hive and Hadoop related to big data. Of course, Apache also has many features, and there are three critical features that you need to learn. The first one is modularity. It means that the Apache HTTP server runs in the form of the core module with the other modules. The core modules are mandatory foundation modules, which means that the Apache HTTP server cannot run properly without these modules, such as mode core and mode soul modules. The mode core modules is used to process the configuration instructions of the configuration file, and the mode soul modules is used to dynamically load other modules. For other modules, such as mode SL and mode PL are optional. We will talk about an installation of Apache later. One of the methods is compliance and installation. In this way, you can install other modules selectively, but the core modules must be compliant and installed. The second feature is Dynamic Shared Object, DSO for short. It allows Apache to manage other modules dynamically, that is, to stop and start installed optional modules without restarting the Apache services. These features improve the flexibility and extensibility of Apache. We will learn how to configure it in the subsequent practice. And finally, the third feature need you know that is Multiprocessing Module, MPM for short, which corresponds to the way the web server receives client requests we introduced earlier. With this feature, Apache supports the multiplexing multiprocess I/O mode. The Apache supports three working modes. The first mode is the pre-fork mode. Apache immediately creates multiple child processes to respond to connection requests after startup. This reduces overheads generated when child processes are frequently created and destroyed, and ensures a stable web server runtime. But child processes occupy memory resources, meaning this mode is not recommended for high concurrency scenarios. And the second mode is worker mode. It means Apache creates multiple child processes after startup, and each child process creates threads to respond to connection requests. This mode occupies fewer resources and can handle a large number of concurrent requests. However, if a child process or thread breaks down, all jobs in the child process are affected. In addition, threads are always occupied by persistent connection requests and will be released only after timeout. And then the third mode is event mode. The latest release in Apache 2.4 and later versions, you can use this event mode. Each child process has a listener thread, which is used to solve the problem that persistent connection always occupies threads in worker mode. The listener threads accept requests and forward them to the worker threads, and then the worker threads handle the request. The listener threads forward only real requests to the worker threads, but not empty threads. Okay, after that, let's see how the Apache services is installed. The Apache HTTP server can be installed using yum or installed from the source code. The first method, yum, is very easy to install. You can use yum command or dnf command to install it. However, this method is weak in controlling optional modules. Generally, this method is used when you learn the Apache HTTP services. The second method, install from the source code. It is more complex but more flexible. You can customize the source code to install optional modules. Source code based on installation applies to scenarios where the operating system has requirements on dependency packages or cross-LAN program development. And for cross-platform program development, it means that in a large development team, some people use Windows for development, and some people use Linux. Therefore, a unified API needs to be used to develop HTTPD. At the same time, APR can be installed as installing from source. So it can avoid the problems caused by different operating systems calling different APIs. And when we use yum to install Apache, the configuration file related to the service are automatically generated. You can run the command rpm-ql http to view all related files. The slides, we just list some of them. Among them, let's see one by one. The main configuration file is httpd.conf, which is located in etc httpd and conf directory. The default extended configuration file is located in conf.d directory. The default function module configuration file is stored in conf.modules.d directory. And the log files is stored in var log httpd. The main configuration files is used to store global configurations, such as the path for storing extended configuration files. When configure the Apache server, you do not need to modify the main configuration file. Instead, you need to add or modify the extended configuration file. This improves the readability of the configuration files and facilitates subsequent maintenance. In addition, the main configuration file provides a basic configuration template. To configure some parameters, you can copy the content in the main configuration file to extended configuration file and then modify the extended configuration file to implement some basic functions. Now, let's take a brief look at the main configuration file. For main configuration file, the root path of the configuration file is set to server root. If other paths need to be configured later, the relative path is used at the start point. For example, if the path in the configuration file is conf.modules.d, the absolute path, that is etc httpd conf modules d in the server root. In addition, the configuration file is startkey.conf, which indicates that all configuration files must end with .conf. These configurations also apply to the path settings for the extended configuration file. In the main configuration file, server admin is used to configure the address contained in the error information returned by the server to the client. And server name is used to indicate the name of the server. And then the document root is used to configure the home directory of the web server. All resources are stored in this path. For the specific configuration of the path, you need to use this pair of directory settings. These settings also include this one for permission setting. We can use directory indexed to configure the page of the web server's default homepage. When a user accesses a web server and does not specify a specific resource, the server returns the default page set here to the user. The following error log parameter is used to configure the path for storing error logs. At last, we can see the configuration of the function modules. Different from the previous page, the included optional is used here for configuration, while the include is used in previous page. Here, include is used, and here we use included optional. But what's the difference? Both them can be used to configure the path of the module configuration file. But the difference is that if the corresponding configuration file does not exist in the corresponding directory, the system reports an error message when include is used, but does not report the error message when we use include optional. And also, we will demonstrate how to configure the home page, the DSO, the NPM, persistent connections, static resources access, and a lot of basic information and configuration of the HTTP Apache server. We will use the practice environment to show you these things.
In this section, we are familiar with the Apache HTTP service and some of its key features, such as DSO, Dynamic Modules Loading and Unloading, NPM, Multi-Processing Modules, and so on. In the next section, we will install the Apache service and perform related configurations to experience its functions and features. Thank you for watching.